Alright, what's going on everyone, and welcome back. So in my last video, I built this assembly table. If you haven't seen the video, go check it out, it's pretty cool. But in that video, I talked about adding storage to this down the road as I used it more. So here we are down the road, so it's time to build some storage. So all of these items are going to need to be mounted to the workbench. So instead of screwing each individual one to the workbench, I'm gonna use a French cleat system. It'll make it easier to move things around as my workflow changes, and it's more expandable. So with my table saw set to 45 degrees and a leftover 2x6, I began ripping up all of my French cleat material. So now that this 2x6 is cut into a whole bunch of French cleats, I've decided to run 3 levels of French cleats along the whole lower side of this workbench. So I'll get those cut to length, give them a quick sanding, and then I'll fasten them with glues and brad nails. I also made this story pole to get my first row established so it's nice and level, and then I'll be using a piece of scrap plywood to maintain consistent spacing and level across the other 2 rows. Alright, so with the boring part now complete, it's time to figure out what types of tools and items I want to store at this workbench. So out of the chute, I know I want my drill, my impact driver, an orbital sander, some clamps for the match fit, and some hardware. Those are the basics and the things I know I'm going to need right out of the bat. But this is going to evolve as I use it, so let me know down in the comments below what types of tools and items you store at your assembly table, because I'm going to need some ideas for down the road. I'll be making all the tool hangers first, and to do that, I'll be using all the leftover plywood that I have from making this assembly table. So with some appropriately sized pieces, I'll be cutting custom notches in them to hang the tools from. And to do that, I'll be using some specialty measuring devices and some complex math equations to figure this out. Now I'm just fucking with you. I'm gonna use this baling wire, cut a couple inches off, bend that shit around the tool handle, and then use it as a stencil to trace out on the plywood. You're welcome. So after using my wizardry skills to lay this out, I'll take it over to the bandsaw, cut it out, give it a kiss on the spindle sander, and then finish it off with a nice roundover on the router table. Now it's just a matter of gluing this on to the back piece that I'll be using to mount this. So with some wood glue and some super glue to hold it in place, I'll then come back and put some brad nails in it. To add some strength and flair, I'll be adding these arched side supports. And although I'm a math whiz, a dirtbag in me says to trace out a random object in my shop to achieve the desired radius that I need. With one hanger complete, I'll repeat those same steps for the remaining 2, just making small adjustments to the design to accommodate each of those tools. Now that all 3 are complete, let's get some tools hung and see how they work. Alright, with these tool hangers complete, it's time to move on to the hardware storage. Now as far as hardware, I'm just talking about general purpose screws, maybe some pocket screws in various sizes and lengths. So I went down to Harbor Freight and came back with a couple storage options. Now the first one is just a typical plastic band where you mount a bracket on the wall and then you just snap into place and kind of a quick grab and go type setup. Now the second option is the one I'm going to go with, and these are a little cooler. They're a thicker, heavier duty plastic box with a clear case that your hardware goes into. Now these are designed to be interlocked together, so I'm going to modify them and have them recessed into this little cabinet that's also going to be on French cleats. Alright, so let me clarify this a little bit more. I refer to this as a cabinet, but more realistically what it's going to be is a box with some dividers. Now these dividers are going to be in a grid fashion, and all 4 sides in the back of this box are going to have dados cut into it to accommodate these dividers. So let's rip up all this material on the table saw. Each of these side pieces is going to require 2 dados to be cut in that. So I'll be clamping this piece of plywood to the rail of my table saw fence, and then using this other piece of plywood as a shim to get the equal spacing between the dados, and be able to duplicate this between all 4 pieces, so that when I go to glue these up, they'll all line up perfectly. To cut the dados in the back piece, I'll be using the same blade setup, but a different stop block system. Now I can't use that original stop block system because of the added thickness of the side pieces now entering the equation. So what I came up with is a secondary fence made out of plywood that I'll be using in conjunction with my factory fence. Now hear me out. The first pass of these dados will be using the factory fence, and then the second pass will be on the plywood fence. Now I space this out when I set it up using those same playing cards to achieve the proper thickness dado for this 1/4 inch plywood. To lock all the 1/4 inch dividers into a grid formation, I'll be cutting half lap joints at all the intersecting points. I started out by placing 2 of the dividers in the dados of the back piece. Then using a razor blade, I marked out all the intersecting points. Once those were laid out, I made quick work of those cuts over at the bandsaw. After all these joints were cut out, I then dry fit them to ensure everything fit nice and snug. I attached all the parts using wood glue and brad nails. I then followed that up by trimming off the excess material with a flush turn bit at my router table. Now I just have to add the French cleat, my hardware, and this hardware holder is complete. All right, so that's gonna wrap this one up. It was super easy. I just took care of a few of the basic hand tools and items that I know I'm gonna need at this assembly table right now. And I did run these French cleats along one of the long sides and one of the short sides, so there's plenty of real estate to add more items as my needs grow. I did come back and make a clamp holder for my match fit clamps. It was a super basic project, just a scrap piece of plywood that I cut some dovetails in. Now I can hang the match fit clamps. And I also made this fancy little drink holder because, hey, you gotta take care of the essentials, right? So if you haven't seen the build video for this assembly table, go check it out and make sure you're tuned in because I got some cool projects coming up, some shop upgrades, some more tools. So thanks for watching and I'll catch you on the next one.